Hi everyone. So we have the pleasure of being joined by Murat from Marvel now, and we're going to have a little chat by our fireside. I've got a couple of questions to prepared for Murat, but we'll just go through it, and hopefully Murat's going to share lots of wisdom from building what sounds like a really exciting business. So. Murat, maybe you can just share with the room your kind of what Marvel's all about, really.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Marvel is a prototyping and collaboration platform that allows anyone who doesn't know how to code to turn static designs into interactive, touchable and clickable prototypes, and able to share those with your clients, your stakeholders, your friends, whoever else who needs to feedback on it.
Cool. Sounds good. Just to clarify, we use it at Go Squared. Actually, it's pretty decent. So that sounds pretty cool. What got you into that? Like, you don't just wake up thinking I'm going to do that, right?
No. So I'm a designer by trade, and one of the things that I just noticed being in the design industry and working for agencies is that whenever you used to present your designs prior to tools like Marvel, you used to basically shove them into PowerPoints, or someone would shove them into PowerPoints for you. So if you spend all this time on like a Retina iPhone app design, and then you hand it over to someone in the agency and they'll push it into a PowerPoint, put clip art over the top, and basically destroy your soul, they will kind of ruin any impact in that design, and kind of basically a client would look at it and not really understand the full impact of your entire flow or what you're trying to pitch. So after going through that process over and over again, I was just like, this is something that surely can be solved by trying to get what you're designing onto an actual device and being able to play around with it. And because I can't code, I just really wanted to basically empower myself to be able to show things in the way I had them in my head.
Awesome. So actually, how did you go from thinking that to actually like starting the company? Because there's probably a lot of people here who've kind of had those kinds of frustrations, but where do you even start, right? Like, okay, I can draw that on a bit of paper maybe, but how do you get going with that?
The first step is to find someone else as bored as you are in the job you're in, and seeing if they want to do something on the side, right? So I can't code, so I found, I didn't find, there were two really talented people that I worked with who were on the development team, and just conversations about work inevitably turned into conversations about side projects and things we could do outside of work, because the day-to-day stuff we were doing was just becoming more and more dull and kind of frustrating. So you end up talking about stuff like, look at this new API that came out, or look at the new iOS release, or things like that. And those conversations go, well, why don't we just do something over evenings and weekends? So that's how kind of Marvel kind of started to gain traction. It was like, hey, I've got this problem at work. I need a tool for myself. Should we just quickly knock something together so I don't have to go through this pain with clients anymore? We just took some time, evenings and weekends. It took about 3 months, and we just did a really early release and didn't really expect anyone to use it, and just kind of built it really quickly, and and just left it and went back to work, and that was the kind of story behind it. And
done.
Cool, go back to work and get paid. So then it turned out other people had the same sort of problem, and it gradually built up into something that one day, maybe about 6 weeks later, it was just like, maybe this should be the thing we're doing, not this agency stuff.
Was there like a specific point where that kind of hit?
So it was when it looked like the people who signed up weren't just signing up and leaving, they were actually using it. I was like, and after about the 1,000th person in space of about a month, it was like, actually, this is probably the most popular thing I've done outside of anything else. So why not invest some time, go and find some angel funding and see who could back this.
Amazing.
But there was a bit of a disconnect there, because if you're working in the agency world in London, it's nothing like the startup world, right? Getting investment and all those things are completely disconnected. You don't have the right contacts, you don't know the right people. So suddenly just going, hey, I'm looking for some money, does anyone want to talk to me? And it just didn't work. And I went through every single investor website and went to the contact form. And if you speak to any investor, they'll tell you never trying to go to that contact form, because it's just like it goes to someone in the office management team or something like that. No one tracks it. So after doing that over and over again, and that didn't work. I tried something else, which was just reach out to to some people who I'd done work for in the past.
Sure. So when you started approaching those investors, did you had your sort of early co-founders, and what was the breakdown of the roles then?
So there's three of us. I was design and kind of everything else. So going out, getting funding, doing things like vision, roadmap, stuff like that. Brendan was on the back end, so creating all the infrastructure, and then Jonathan was on mobile development. So we also had an iOS app as well. So between the three of us, we covered pretty much all areas, and that was enough to get it off the ground and get started.
So that's awesome. So you then started approaching these investors. What was that kind of experience like as a complete noob to the whole investment world?
It was pretty bad. So basically, you're going in really green and trying to get investment, and not really knowing what you're doing. I had one investor just stop me like midway through a pitch, going, "I really don't understand what's on that slide. Can you just clarify that?" And you're just sitting there, you're completely thrown. So had to really adjust to becoming more of a salesman, if that makes sense. So I know. I mean, one of the things that you realize as a designer is that you tend to pitch your ideas all the time anyway. So you're trying to get a client to take on your idea. You're trying to get other people to build your stuff. So you're doing that anyway. So it was like, how do I get the person I'm speaking to as excited about me as this, that I am in this idea. So that was a key thing for me. It's like, if you could go into that room, get that person excited, so when you left, they were like, "Oh, I really want to like be part of that thing." That would be a good thing to aim for. But yeah, like going out and trying to find investors, meet them. We got turned down 10, 15 times before we got an offer. So it takes perseverance and a bit of luck, I think. Yeah, I think definitely those two things helped us.
Sure thing. So I guess maybe fast forwarding a bit to today and where Marvel's at today.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to share about like where you guys are at today? Because I think a lot of us have probably seen the Marvel name popping up all over the place. And it'd be good to hear.
So today we're over 1 million users. About 80,000 prototypes get made a month. About 1.3 million designs uploaded. So we're growing really fast. There's a lot of stuff happening on the platform that is being used for to create everything from apps like Deliveroo to schools using it for education purposes and as part of curriculums and stuff. So it goes end to end, and just like RotaGeek, I mean, we're starting to look into enterprise and trying to move up the chain, which is really interesting because that's not where we started. We started with free users, freelancers. And you're starting to adjust to become a kind of more enterprise focused business, while you still want to keep that bit that got you there in the first place. So that part's really interesting and it's a challenge, but it's something we're going through now.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So the kind of growth is almost dragging you into going up the chain, going into the enterprise side. Like how are you managing that from like a product perspective? Because I would imagine a lot of the free users are quite vocal as well as these enterprise clients. Like it must be a nightmare trying to balance all that stuff off each other. So
right? The feature requests become really, really different. So you go from can you make this transition, go from right to left, to something like, can you get single sign-on and a certification for security, which takes 12 to 18 months. And you're like, right, okay, how do we do that? And so those sorts of things are definitely taken me to approach the roadmap in a different way, and splitting things out into enterprise versus free and other tiers that we have. But yeah, you have to weigh up this thing between getting a whale in and making potentially a huge sale versus the tens of thousands of people who sign up every month who are using it for small projects, or they're in small design teams. So I wouldn't say we haven't kind of figured that out yet. We're still getting there. I mean, this is something that is a work in progress, definitely. So I think that maybe in the next 6 months we'll have all of this figured out into
all the answers.
All the answers, forever. And we'll complete the startup world. No, we're just basically spitting out teams. I think we're bringing in the expertise. And that's it. You find people who have experience with enterprises, who have experience building enterprise features, and then you begin to plan and use their expertise to get you to the next stage. So.
Yeah, because it was interesting hearing from Chris where they sort of made this complete 180 and focused entirely on enterprise, whereas you guys are trying to straddle the two. How does that feel on the, also culturally, team-wise? That's quite, my impression is when you start building out enterprise sales, it can change things a lot.
So Marvel is a product that goes from bottom up. So we don't tend to get in a conversation with a CEO, a CTO, or someone like that, who will then mandate and push it all the way down across the business. Designers, if you try and tell designers to use a tool that they don't want to use, they're like, no, I don't think so. And they'll go back to what they like. So, so our approach has to be that the adoption through the design teams and the creative teams and the marketing teams and whoever else is using Marvel has to be strong enough to warrant moving up into something that is more of an enterprise contract. And how that affects the product teams, it means that we have to mature in the way we build features. We have to go even more detailed into making the right solution and be it perfect from end to end, because you can't have a crappy rollout of an enterprise feature because you've got so many people relying on it, who are your biggest customers. So that part is something that I've noticed we have to kind of move into more and pay more attention to. But yeah, it's a challenge.
Sure. I guess on the we'll get onto more of the growth stuff in a sec, but also on the product side, how do you actually understand when you've rolled a feature out, whether it's done well or not? Is there ever a case where you guys have rolled something out and maybe worked on it for a bit and realize it's just a total piece of junk? Or?
Oh yeah. We made so many mistakes. So we've every 6 months, there is something that there is some small thing or large thing that you look at and you just think, I need to rip that out because it's just not performing in the way they want it to. I think the worst thing is just to leave it and hope for the best. I think that if something's not performing and you give it a few chances and you do a couple of iterations and it's not working, you just got to take it out because it's just adding complexity to the design process, to the development process. But we have success metrics for every feature we build.
Okay.
So we'll be like, okay, what are the top 3 things we expect when we build this? Is it going to increase revenue? Is it going to increase activity? Or is it, images uploaded, whatever it might be? And then we track against those. Sometimes it might be this feature is going to get kind of a low adoption, but the people who use it are going to be quite high-paying customers and stuff like that. So that's another way we look at stuff. So defining those in a discovery stage prior to going into any design or development helps a lot.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. This stuff's so hard. It's really interesting hearing from you guys because you're product experts.
I was going to ask you how you do it. So
I don't have a clue. On the moving on. On the growth side of things, my impression is that you guys focus a lot on content, and you have a blog that I think a lot of us in this room read on a regular basis. How's that come about? Was that a planned out strategy from the start, or was it let's write a blog and see what happens?
Yeah, no, it didn't. It didn't start off that way. It started off with me thinking I could write blog posts every week and just finding out after a few months that that's not possible. So it went from, I'm going to write, and I think I launched it. I think there's a post on our blog which says I'm going to write every single part of this journey and I'm going to give you full transparency. I got really inspired by Buffer and all that other stuff. I was like, I want to be just like Buffer. And I was like, God. And then after about 3 posts, I was like, oh, this is really tiring. I don't think I can keep doing this. So it went from me writing about Marvel to, okay, I'm just going to write about feature releases.
Okay.
And so we just started doing that. And then you look back on the blog and it's just like feature releases and nothing really that interesting. So then it was like, all right, okay, let's hire some content writers and pay a couple of freelancers. They're going to write about design. It's going to be cool. We're going to get some traffic. It's going to be great. And then you hire freelance writers, but they don't actually understand the market you're trying to target. So they're trying to talk like they're in the shoes of designers when they're not, which means it doesn't really resonate and people aren't reading it and it's not getting shared.
Yeah.
So I read a post by Intercom about their evergreen content strategy, and it really hit home about how writing really good posts or just creating really good posts in the long term will have a compounding effect on your blog because they will never go out of date. Whereas, you might want to write something that's just kind of a trend article or a listicle thing. It's like, okay, it's going to do well for that one moment in time, but no one's going to keep coming back to it. So after we read that, we started to look at what could scale, and the thing that could scale the most is speaking to our users and asking them to write blog posts for us. And that doesn't sound like we're taking advantage of them, but basically, we have a platform which is, we're going to give them a tons of great exposure, probably bigger than Medium in their following list, right? We have a million people that can see their posts and get access to it. And we'll put in them a newsletter that goes out every week. So that's what we want to give them. We want to make sure they get their name in lights, and they're able to tell their stories to the world. Yeah. And then for us, we get amazing content and we get to work with the community. So that is the part where it began to scale really well.
Nice. So do you, I think a lot of people would love to blog more to get more content out. How do you then turn that sort of content into actual customers? What does that journey look like? Do you sort of look at every post and say, that made us this much money, that was a good post, that made us this little? Or is it just we're running a blog, it's part of the plan?
So it started off but it started to get more sophisticated over time. So we now have a system set up where certain blog posts can get certain upsells. So if we're writing a blog post about iPhone apps, we can push our iPhone app in part of the blog, in part of the post as a native kind of style ad as you go through, and then the same with enterprise and a few other things like that. So that's kind of come in the last few months, but we're getting more and more in-depth information from what people are reading and where they're going after they read. So we really want to track people end to end, how many blog posts they read, what they do after that, and using tools like HubSpot and all those things that you can really understand your usage.
Getting quite scientific about it. I'm not sure how we're doing on time. How are we doing on time? We're good. I feel like we might have a couple more questions, then we'll jump into the Q&A with the whole panel. But yeah, I guess another part of the growth side of things is as you go up market, how do you try and I think you were saying you're moving into having multiple kind of parts of the product. How are you thinking about aligning the marketing, sales, and product development across the whole company?
I think that's another thing which is we're figuring out at the moment.
Yeah.
In the past, it was kind of very. Just very ad hoc. It was okay, we built a feature, and a couple of days later, it's has anyone written a blog post for it? I know. Has anyone told people on Facebook? No. So basically, now we're getting into a process of syncing up all the teams, and identifying who's responsible for what on the launch, and not just that feature's launched, but actually how you carry it through for the next few months, right? Because just because you launched it on day one doesn't mean you can't. You have to stop telling people about it on 6 weeks later. You can still remind
people
them.
are so worried about we've already told them about it. We don't want to bombard them.
You'd be surprised about how many people just don't notice or just don't pay attention to that stuff. So making sure that the right people see that message first, and also doing things like beta programs now and trial programs. So behind the scenes, we're engaging all of our users months before anything goes out, and just saying we've got this really exciting feature coming, we'd love you to be a part of it and help us make it better. So by the time it gets out, there's already thousands of people you can talk to about it, or we'll share it because they got early access. So
awesome. I've got one question on investment, and then one more after that, but then we'll do Q&A. You've raised quite a bit of money now, right?
Yeah, we have, It's about 8 million in total.
8 million, bloody hell.
Which I know it sounds like a ton of money, and it is, but it was spread over a period of time.
Yeah.
And I guess it's one of the things where I think you'll notice as well is you'll raise something like let's say you raise $1 million, and everyone around, all your friends are like, you raised $1 million. It's like, well, you could do it. Can I have some? Can you buy a Ferrari? But when you start breaking it down into salaries and things like that, and office space, it's actually it does whittle down quite quickly, and you think that's actually headcount wise, it's not a huge amount of people. But what we did is we raised the Series A because we began to identify new areas where we could get into, which which kind of came about by looking at our users, speaking to them,
Sure.
also looking at the market, where it's going. So wanting to attack those areas, we needed funding to do it, and to grow the team. So
I guess that takes us nicely onto my final question, Murat, which is where next for Marvel? What's up next?
Right now we are building 2 to 3 new segments of the product, which we want to go into different areas of the market, which we've identified. And the next step is kind of really fulfilling the vision of the product, which is to help democratize design, make individuals and teams across entire businesses, not just designers, able to bring their ideas to life in one place. So that's kind of the focus now, and we're just working towards getting there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Murat. That's been amazing. You guys can ask some questions in a second. Yeah, really appreciate it. Right, thank you.